On a stormy day, a grocery clerk threw herself into harm's way to save a little boy from a speeding truck. She asked for nothing in return, only used gentle words to calm the child's trembling. When the boy's wealthy father tried to repay her, she quietly refused. Neither of them could have known that this single act of mercy would spark a bond powerful enough to change all their lives forever. Before we dive deeper into this story, tell us where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming stories every day. The rain came down hard that day, heavy drops slapping against the pavement and bouncing off the hoods of passing cars. Emma pulled her jacket tighter around her body as she hurried along the sidewalk, her shoes already soaked through. She'd just finished her shift at Brennan's Market, the grocery store where she'd worked for nearly 3 years, and all she wanted was to get home before the storm grew worse. Her canvas sneakers were already soaked through, and the paper bag of discounted groceries, dented cans, day-old bread, bruised fruit was growing soggy in her arms. She walked quickly, head down, thinking about her mother's cough that morning, and whether they could afford another doctor's visit this month. The street was nearly empty. Most people had the sense to be indoors. Emma passed the bus stop where an elderly man huddled under the shelter, then crossed at the light, her mind already moving ahead to dinner, to bills, to the 100 small concerns that filled her days. That's when she heard it, a hollow bounce, a splash, and the light patter of small boots hitting puddles. Across the street, a ball rolled off the curb and into traffic. A little boy, maybe 6 years old, darted after it, laughing, unaware, unafraid. His blonde hair clung to his forehead, his raincoat bright against the slate-colored street. "Hey!" Emma shouted, but the wind tore the sound away. The boy took a step toward the ball. The truck's horn blared, then the white delivery truck swung around the corner, its tires hissing on the wet asphalt. Sharon didn't think. The groceries fell from her arms, cans scattering into the gutter. She lunged forward, sprinting through the rain. The boy bent to grab his ball just as the truck's horn blared. Sharon reached him in 3 desperate strides, seized the hood of his coat, and yanked him backward with all her strength. They crashed together onto the curb, her shoulder slamming the pavement. The truck screamed past, missing them by inches, a wave of dirty water splashing over them. For a moment she lay stunned, chest heaving, the rain stinging her face, then she heard a sharp gasp beneath her. The boy was curled against her, motionless except for the ragged rise and fall of his breath. Emma pushed herself up, heart pounding. Hey, it's okay." He blinked up at her, eyes wide, confusion giving way to shock. His mouth opened, and suddenly the sound came, a broken wail that caught in his throat, raw and frightened. "Hey, you're safe," she said quickly, pulling him into her lap, one arm around his shoulders. "You're okay, sweetheart. I've got you." He trembled violently, clutching at her sleeve with small cold fingers. The tears came fast then, mixing with the rain on his face. "I want my daddy," he sobbed. Okay, we'll find him," Emma murmured, rubbing slow circles on his back the way her mother used to do. "What's your name?" he hiccuped. Jackson, she repeated, steadying her voice. "That's a strong name. You're safe now, Jackson. You did so good." He cried harder for a moment, then pressed his face against her shoulder, the sound fading into shuddering breaths. Emma held him close, rocking gently on the cold, wet pavement, while the rain fell around them. More people were coming. A young mother with a toddler on her hip appeared with a blanket, draping it over Jackson. "I called the police," she said. "They're sending someone." "I don't need," Emma started to say, but the woman was already talking to someone else, explaining what she'd seen. A man came running from down the street, his long cashmere coat flapping behind him. He was tall, maybe 40, with dark hair going silver at the temples and those same gray-blue eyes as the boy. His face was chalk white with terror. Jackson. The name came out like a prayer and a curse together. Jackson. Oh God. The boy's head whipped around. "Daddy." Jackson launched himself from Emma's arms, nearly knocking her backward into the puddle. The man caught him, dropping to his knees right there in the water, gathering his son against his chest with a desperate strength that made Emma's throat tighten. She watched the man's face, saw him squeeze his eyes shut, saw his mouth move in what might have been prayer or might have been wordless thanksgiving. His hands moved over Jackson's arms, his back, checking for injuries with shaking fingers. "I'm okay, Daddy," Jackson said, his small voice muffled against his father's shoulder. "The lady saved me, she caught me before the truck came." The man's eyes opened, and found Emma's. She was still sitting in the puddle, her clothes soaked through, the borrowed blanket slipping from her shoulders. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Emma saw shock in his face, relief so intense it looked like pain. And something else, something raw and stripped bare, like someone who just looked into an abyss and found himself still standing on solid ground. "Thank you," he said, his voice cracked on the words. "I thank you." Emma pushed herself to her feet. Her legs felt unsteady, and her hands were starting to shake now that the adrenaline was fading. "He's okay, that's what matters." The man stood too, still holding Jackson. "I need to your name, please. I need to know who." "It's fine." Emma was already turning away, scanning the sidewalk for her scattered groceries. Most of them were ruined. The bread soaked, the bag torn, cans dented further from their roll into the street. She salvaged what she could, stuffing them into the remains of the paper bag. "Wait," the man called. "Please, I need to thank you properly. But Emma was walking away, her sneakers squelching, rain plastering her hair to her face. Behind her she could hear Jackson crying again, not from fear anymore, but from that overwhelming relief that comes after terror passes. She could hear the father's voice, low and soothing, trying to calm his son. She didn't need thanks, didn't want the attention, the questions, the inevitable awkwardness of accepting gratitude for something that had been pure instinct. What she'd done wasn't special. It was just what you did when you saw someone in danger. At least it was what you were supposed to do. Emma walked 3 blocks before the shaking got bad enough that she had to stop. She leaned against a brick wall under an awning, her grocery bag at her feet, and let herself feel it, the fear she hadn't had time for in the moment. The knowledge of how close it had been, how easily that boy could have died while she watched. Her hands wouldn't stop trembling. Her breath came in short gasps that had nothing to do with exertion. After a few minutes, she picked up her groceries and continued home, leaving wet footprints on the sidewalk behind her. 15 blocks away, in the back of a town car, Jameson Whitmore held his son and tried to stop shaking. "I'm sorry, Daddy," Jackson whispered for the 10th time. "I know I was supposed to wait for you. I know I broke the rule." "Shits, it's okay," but Jameson's voice didn't sound okay. It sounded thin and stretched, like something about to break. Mrs. Chen sat in the passenger seat, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "I only looked away for a second, Mr. Whitmore. He was right there and then." "It's not your fault," Jameson said, though part of him wanted to scream at her, wanted to blame someone for the worst moment of his life. But he knew it wasn't her fault, it was his, for being late. For taking that last phone call when he should have been walking out the door, for the 1,000 small choices that had led to this moment. He looked down at Jackson, at his son's pale face and wide eyes. The boy was still trembling, even wrapped in Jameson's coat. "Are you sure you're not hurt?" "Nothing hurts, just scared," Jackson said in a small voice. Jameson pulled him closer, breathing in the smell of rain and wet child, and something he couldn't name, something like grace or luck, or divine intervention. "Me too, buddy, me too." As the car pulled up to their house in the West Hills, Jameson was already thinking about the woman who'd saved Jackson's life. She'd been young, mid-30s maybe. Black, with her hair in braids that had been coming loose from the rain. Wearing a cheap jacket and shoes that had seen better days, carrying a bag of groceries that looked like they'd come from the discount bin. She'd walked away before he could get her name. Before he could do anything more than stammer a useless thank you. That night, after Jackson was finally asleep, after the bath, the hot chocolate, the 3 stories, the nightlight turned on and door left open, Jameson sat in his study and called his head of security. "I need you to find someone," he said. It took them less than 4 hours. Emma Mitchell, 34, employee at Brennan's Market. Single, living with her mother in a modest apartment in the Parkrose neighborhood, no criminal record. A mountain of medical debt in collections, mostly related to her mother's chronic illness. 3 years of law school at Lewis & Clark, specializing in family law and child advocacy. Withdrawn in her final year, no degree, Jameson sat at his desk long after midnight, looking at the photo his security team had pulled from the store's employee records. She looked tired in the picture, her smile polite but not quite reaching her eyes. She'd risked her life for his son without hesitation, without knowing who Jackson was, who Jameson was, what they could offer in return. He thought about the way she'd held Jackson, even soaking wet and probably hurt from the fall. The way she'd spoken to him, calm and gentle, cutting through his fear. The way she'd walked away like it was nothing, like she saved lives every day on her way home from work. Jameson had spent 42 years learning that everyone wanted something: money, access, influence. Everyone had an angle, a price, a reason for doing what they did. But Emma Mitchell had asked for nothing. It unsettled him, made him want to understand who she was, what had shaped her, why someone who'd clearly had dreams and plans had ended up stocking shelves at a grocery store. More than that though, it made him want to give her something. Needed to give her something, because Jackson was everything, and she'd given him back his son when he'd been seconds from losing him forever. He just had to figure out what she would accept. Emma spent the next 2 days trying not to think about the boy in the rain. She went to work, came home, took care of her mother, paid what bills she could, and avoided the calls about the ones she couldn't. Normal life, normal routines, pushing the memory of those gray-blue eyes, father and son, out of her mind whenever they tried to surface. It didn't work very well. Thursday afternoon, she was restocking shelves in the cereal aisle when Phil, her manager, appeared at the end of the row. He had an odd look on his face, something between curiosity and nervousness. "Emma, someone's here to see you." She looked up from the boxes of cornflakes, already feeling her stomach tighten. "Who?" Didn't give a name. "But he looks expensive." Phil glanced back toward the front of the store. "Asked for you specifically, said it's about Tuesday." Emma's hand stilled on the cereal box. She'd known, somehow, that this wasn't over. That the man, the father, wouldn't just let it go. "Tell him I'm working." "I did, he said he'd wait." Phil shifted his weight. "Look, I don't know what this is about, but the guy's wearing a suit that probably costs more than my car. Maybe you should just talk to him." Emma set down the cereal and brushed her hands on her apron. "Fine. Where is he?" "Produce section." Been standing there for 20 minutes, she found him by the organic apples, looking supremely out of place in his charcoal suit and Italian shoes. He was examining a display of Honeycrisps with the kind of intense focus people used when they were nervous and trying not to show it. Emma took a breath and walked over. "Mr. Whitmore," he said quickly, turning to face her. "Jameson Whitmore. And you're Emma Mitchell." She felt a flicker of something, not quite anger, not quite unease. "You looked me up. I needed to know who saved my son's life." He held up a hand as she started to speak. "I'm sorry, that was intrusive. I should have just waited to see if you'd give me your name, but I..." He stopped, seeming to recalibrate. "I'm not handling this well." Emma studied him. In the daylight, without rain and terror obscuring everything, she could see him more clearly. Mid-40s, probably. Good-looking in that polished, expensive way. Dark hair going silver at the temples, sharp cheekbones, those distinctive gray-blue eyes. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept much in the past 2 days. She could relate. "How's Jackson?" she asked. Jameson's expression softened immediately. "He's okay, shaken up, some scrapes and bruises, but okay. Thanks to you. I'm glad. He wanted to come today. To thank you himself, but I thought, I wanted to speak with you first." Jameson reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope, cream-colored, expensive paper. "Thick, please, take this." Emma looked at the envelope, but didn't reach for it. "What is it?" $25,000. The number hung in the air between them. Emma felt her jaw tighten, felt something cold settle in her chest. She'd expected this maybe, but that didn't make it any easier. "No," she said quietly. Jameson blinked. "I'm sorry, I said no." Emma met his eyes, keeping her voice level. "I don't want your money, Mr. Whitmore. I don't understand. Tuesday, you saved Jackson's life. You risked your own safety. You were hurt in the fall." "I wasn't hurt, just bruised." Emma wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly very aware of her faded store uniform, her worn shoes, the fact that they were having this conversation in a grocery store where she made $11 an hour. What happened Tuesday wasn't a transaction. "I didn't do it expecting payment." "I know that, but surely you could use..." He stopped himself, but too late. "Use the money," Emma finished for him. "That's what you were going to say, right? You ran your background check, so you know about the medical debt. About my mother's illness. About how I'm barely keeping my head above water most days." She felt heat rising in her face. "So you came here thinking you could write a check and make it all go away. Make yourself feel better about being late to pick up your son." Jameson's face went pale. "That's not, isn't it?" Emma shook her head. "I'm not judging you, Mr. Whitmore. You're rich, You're used to solving problems with money. But I didn't save Jackson because I hoped his father would pay me. I saved him because he's a child and he was in danger. That's what people are supposed to do for each other. Not for money, not for recognition, just because it's right. She turned to walk away, but Jameson's voice stopped her. You studied law. Emma paused, not looking back. That was a long time ago. Family law, child advocacy, you were in your final year when you withdrew. His voice was quieter now. Why did you stop? Emma turned back slowly. My mother got sick, someone had to take care of her, and we couldn't afford private care. Medical bills don't pay themselves. And your dream, of helping children who didn't have a voice. The question hurt more than Emma wanted to admit. She swallowed against the sudden tightness in her throat. Dreams don't pay the bills, Mr. Whitmore. Dreams don't keep the lights on or buy medications. Sometimes you have to put them away and do what needs to be done. Jameson was quiet for a long moment. Then he tucked the envelope back into his jacket. I apologize. You're absolutely right. It was insulting. I'm sorry. Emma hadn't expected an apology. It's fine. It's not, but thank you for saying so. He hesitated. May I ask you something? Emma shrugged, wary. If someone saved your child's life, if you had a child and someone did what you did for Jackson, how would you want to thank them? Emma thought about it. She thought about Jackson's small face streaked with rain and tears, about the desperate relief in Jameson Whitmore's eyes. I'd make sure my child knew they were loved, she said finally. I'd make sure they knew they weren't alone in the world. That there are people who care about them, who would catch them if they fell. She met Jameson's eyes. That's all the thanks I need, Mr. Whitmore. Just make sure Jackson knows how precious he is. Something shifted in Jameson's expression, surprise or recognition, or something else, Emma couldn't quite name. He nodded slowly. I will, thank you, Miss Mitchell. He turned to leave, then paused and looked back. For what it's worth, I think you would have made an excellent lawyer. Those children you wanted to help, they needed someone like you. Still do. Then he was walking toward the exit, moving through the fluorescent-lit aisles with his expensive suit and his envelope full of money. Emma wouldn't take, and she was left standing by the apples with her heart beating too fast and her hands trembling slightly. Phil appeared at her elbow. Everything okay? Fine, Emma said. But she kept seeing Jameson Whitmore's face when she'd refused his money. The confusion there, like he genuinely couldn't understand why someone wouldn't take $25,000. She went back to stocking shelves, but her mind kept circling back to his last words. Those children you wanted to help, still do. Jameson sat in his car in the parking lot for 10 minutes, staring at the envelope on the passenger seat. He'd been so certain she would take it. Everyone took money. Everyone had a price. It was the one universal truth he'd learned in his 42 years. Except Emma Mitchell hadn't taken it, hadn't even considered it. She'd looked at him like he'd insulted her, like offering money for saving Jackson's life was somehow demeaning rather than generous. Jameson thought about what she'd said, about dreams and medical bills, about putting things away and doing what needed to be done. He thought about the background check, about 3 years of law school abandoned in the final stretch, about someone who'd wanted to help children finding herself stocking cereal instead. He thought about his late wife, Catherine, who'd been a lawyer, who'd specialized in education policy and child welfare reform, who'd made him promise, before the cancer took her, that he'd find ways to continue her work, to help kids who fell through the cracks. He'd been trying. Donations to the right nonprofits, serving on boards, writing checks, but Catherine would have said it wasn't enough. She would have said money was easy, but actually showing up was hard. Jameson pulled out his phone and called his assistant. Amanda, I need you to do something for me. Of course, Mr. Whitmore, research child advocacy programs in Portland. Community level, grassroots stuff, not the big established non-profits, the smaller operations that actually work directly with at-risk kids. I want to know what's working, what's not, where the gaps are. There was a pause. May I ask what this is for? I'm figuring out how to say thank you, Jameson said. I thought you were taking care of that today. I tried, didn't work. He looked at the envelope again. So I need to try something different. He drove home through the gray afternoon, his mind already working on the problem. Emma Mitchell had refused his money, but she'd also shown him something important, that she still cared about the dream she'd had to abandon. That somewhere under the exhaustion and resignation, there was still someone who wanted to help kids who didn't have a voice. He just needed to figure out how to give her that chance. 4 days later, on a rainy Monday evening, Phil found Emma again. That guy's back, and he brought a kid this time. Emma's stomach dropped. Tell them I'm busy. The kid's been asking for you for 15 minutes. Little blonde boy says his name is Jackson. Phil's expression softened. He made you a picture, Emma. He's really excited to see you. Emma closed her eyes briefly. Damn it, she couldn't say no to Jackson. Fine, where are they? Break room. I let them wait in there since it's more private. The break room was a small depressing space, card table, plastic chairs, humming refrigerator, ancient coffee maker. Jackson was sitting at the table, coloring intently on a piece of paper. Jameson stood by the window, looking out at the rain. Jackson saw her first. His whole face lit up, and he jumped from his chair. Miss Emma, you're here. Hey buddy. Emma crouched down to his level, and Jackson threw his arms around her neck in an enthusiastic hug that nearly knocked her over. She found herself hugging him back, this small boy who smelled like rain and crayons and something sweet, maybe hot chocolate. I made you a picture, Jackson said, pulling back and thrusting the paper at her. See, that's you, and that's me, and that's Daddy. Emma took the drawing carefully. 3 stick figures beneath a bright yellow sun. Jackson had given her a huge smile and written Miss Emma in uneven letters above her head. This is beautiful, Jackson. Thank you, you can put it on your refrigerator. Daddy puts all my pictures on our refrigerator. I will, I promise. Jackson beamed, then turned to his father. Can we talk to her now, like you said? Jameson stepped forward. He looked different today, less formal, wearing dark jeans and a simple sweater instead of a suit. But he still looked expensive, still carried that air of wealth that set him apart from the break room's fluorescent lights and scuffed linoleum. Do you have a few minutes? He asked. I'd like to talk to you about something, not money, he added quickly, seeing Emma's expression. Something else. Emma hesitated, then nodded. Okay. They sat at the table, Jackson climbing into his father's lap. Jameson settled him there absently, one arm around the boy's waist, and Emma felt something catch in her chest at the casual affection of the gesture. First, I want to apologize again for last week, Jameson said. You were right, what I did was clumsy and insulting. It's fine, it's not, but I appreciate you being gracious about it. He took a breath. I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About your dream of helping children. About how you had to put that away to deal with life's necessities. Mr. Whitmore, Jameson, please. He shifted Jackson slightly. My wife Catherine, she passed away 2 years ago. Cancer. She was a lawyer, specialized in education policy and child welfare reform. Before she died, she made me promise to continue her work. To find ways to help kids who fall through the cracks. Emma's expression softened. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. Jameson's arm tightened slightly around Jackson. The point is, I've been trying to honor that promise. I've donated money, funded programs, served on boards. But it always felt distant, abstract. Like I was doing what Catherine wanted, without really understanding why it mattered. He met Emma's eyes. Then you saved Jackson, and I started thinking about what Catherine would have said about you. About what you did, and I realized she would have said you're exactly the kind of person her programs needed. Someone who understands what it means to sacrifice for others. Someone who doesn't hesitate when someone needs help. Where is this going? Emma asked carefully. I want to start something here in Portland. A community program focused on at-risk kids, not a big non-profit with overhead and bureaucracy, something small and grassroots. Reading programs, safe spaces, workshops on everything from basic safety to conflict resolution. The kind of thing that makes a real difference in individual lives. Emma felt her heart start to beat faster. That sounds wonderful, but I don't see what it has to do with me. I want you to run it. The words hung in the air. Emma stared at him. What? Build the program from the ground up. Use your training, your understanding of what these kids need, your passion for advocacy. I'll provide the funding and support, but the vision would be yours.
Emma shook her head. I can't, I'm not qualified, I never finished law school. You're someone who sees a child in danger and doesn't hesitate to act, Jameson interrupted gently. You're someone who understands sacrifice, you're someone who wanted to use the law to help kids who don't have anyone fighting for them. He leaned forward slightly. Those qualifications matter more than any degree. I have responsibilities, bills, my mother. The salary would be $75,000 a year to start, with full health benefits for you and your mother. Enough to live on while you do this work. $75,000. Emma did the math automatically, more than twice what she made at Brennan's, with health insurance for her mother. She thought about not having to choose between medications and groceries. Thought about being able to pay down the debt, to breathe for the first time in years. But she'd learned to be suspicious of things that seemed too good to be true. Why? She asked. Why me? You could hire someone with an actual degree, actual experience. Because Jackson hasn't smiled like this. Jameson gestured to his son, who was watching them with bright eyes, in 2 years. Because you reminded me what real courage looks like. And because I think Catherine was right, the people who can make the most difference are the ones who've been in the dark themselves. They know where to hold the light. Emma looked at Jackson, at his hopeful face, at the drawing still clutched in her hand. She thought about law school, about the dreams she'd carefully packed away, about waking up every morning to stock shelves instead of standing in front of a judge, advocating for a child who needed help. She thought about her mother, about the medical debt, about the collection calls she avoided every day.
She thought about doing work that mattered. I need time to think about it, she said. Of course, take all the time you need. Jackson tugged on his father's sleeve. Does this mean Miss Emma will come read us stories? Jameson smiled. Maybe, buddy, if she says yes. Emma stood up. Can I ask you something first? Anything. If I do this, and I'm not saying I will, but if I do, I need to be clear about expectations. She met Jameson's eyes. This can't be about making you look good. It can't be about press coverage or using my story to polish your reputation. If we do this, we do it quietly. We do it right. We do it for the kids. Understood? Jameson nodded slowly. Understood. And I won't be your trophy, your way of proving you're a good person because you helped the struggling black woman who saved your kid. Emma's voice was firm. If that's what any part of this is about, we stop right now. That's not what this is about, Jameson said quietly. But I appreciate you being direct. You're right to be cautious. You don't know me, and you have no reason to trust that my motives are pure. So what are your motives? Jameson was quiet for a moment. Honestly. Partly guilt that Jackson was in danger in the first place. Partly gratitude that he's still alive. Partly a desire to honor Catherine's memory by doing something that would have made her proud. He looked down at Jackson, then back at Emma. But mostly, I think you're right about what kids need, and I think you're the person who could actually provide it. Emma tucked the drawing under her arm. I'll think about it. Give me until Friday. Thank you, that's all I can ask. As they walked out of the break room, Jackson called over his father's shoulder. I hope you say yes, Miss Emma. Despite herself, Emma smiled. That night, Emma sat at her mother's bedside and told her about the offer. Evelyn Mitchell listened without interrupting, her thin hands folded over the blanket, her breathing slightly labored even with the oxygen. At 68 she looked older. Illness aged people in ways that went beyond years. What do you want to do? Evelyn asked when Emma finished. I don't know, Mama. It's so much money, so much opportunity. But what if it's not real? What if he changes his mind, or the program falls apart, and I've quit my job for nothing? Baby girl. Evelyn reached out and took Emma's hand. You've been taking care of me for 5 years. 5 years of putting your dreams on hold, working a job you hate, struggling to keep us afloat. Don't you think it's time to let yourself want something again? But what about you? What about me? You think I want you spending the rest of your life stocking shelves because I got sick? Evelyn's voice was firm despite its weakness. I taught you to help people, to stand up when someone needs you. This man is offering you a chance to do exactly that, and you're afraid to take it. I'm not afraid, you're terrified, and I understand why. But Emma, honey, fear is not a reason to say no to something that could change your life. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. What if I fail? Then you fail, and you pick yourself up and try something else. Evelyn squeezed her hand. But what if you don't fail? What if this is exactly what you're supposed to be doing? Emma sat with that question long after her mother fell asleep. She thought about Jackson's drawing, about Jameson Whitmore's promise to let her build the program her way. She thought about the kids she'd wanted to help, the voice she'd wanted to give to children who didn't have one. She thought about being afraid and doing it anyway. On Friday morning, Emma called the number Jameson had given her. "I'll do it," she said when he answered. "I'll take the job." There was a pause, and then Jameson's voice came through warm and relieved. "Thank you, Emma. You won't regret this." "I hope not," Emma said. "When do I start?" Emma gave Brennan's Market 2 weeks' notice. Phil was sorry to see her go but genuinely happy for her. Her co-workers threw her a small party with grocery store cake and congratulations that ranged from sincere to skeptical. Her first official day at the Lightkeepers program, as Jameson had named it, was a Monday in early December. He'd secured space in a community center in northeast Portland, in a neighborhood where the gap between need and resources was visible on every corner. The space itself was modest, 2 medium-sized rooms with scuffed linoleum floors, folding tables and metal chairs, walls painted in that institutional beige that seemed universal to community centers everywhere. But the location was good, accessible by bus, in the heart of the neighborhood they wanted to serve. Emma spent the first 2 weeks just listening. She met with parents, teachers, social workers, community leaders. She asked what kids needed most, where the gaps were, what programs had been tried before and why they'd failed. She learned that what people needed most wasn't complicated. Safe spaces after school, help with homework, adults who showed up consistently and actually cared, programs that treated kids like human beings rather than problems to be solved. So she started simple. A reading hour every Tuesday and Thursday evening. Doors open, no registration required, no strings attached. Come listen to stories, stay as long as you want, have some juice and cookies. The first Tuesday, 3 kids showed up, 2 girls who lived in the building next door and a boy whose mother worked late and needed somewhere for him to be. Emma read them picture books and chapter books and poetry, and they listened with the kind of hungry attention that told her they didn't get read too often. The second Thursday, 5 kids came. The next Tuesday, 8. By the end of the first month, Emma had 15 regular attendees and had to start bringing in extra chairs. Jackson came to every session with either Jameson or Mrs. Chen, the housekeeper. At first, Emma worried that Jameson's presence, his expensive clothes, his obvious wealth, would make the other families uncomfortable. But Jameson seemed to understand the dynamic. He sat in the back, dressed down in jeans and sweaters, didn't draw attention to himself. He was just another parent, listening to stories, keeping an eye on his kid. And Jackson thrived. The haunted look he'd had that first day in the rain had faded, replaced by genuine happiness. He made friends easily, shared his books, helped younger kids with their jackets. Emma watched him sometimes and thought about second chances, about how close he'd come to not having any of this. One Thursday evening, in late January, after everyone else had gone home, Jameson helped Emma stack chairs. Jackson was coloring at one of the tables, content to wait. "You're good at this," Jameson said, breaking the comfortable silence. Emma shrugged. "It's not complicated. Just show up, be consistent, actually care about the kids. That's more rare than you think." Jameson set a chair on the stack. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. What made you want to do child advocacy in the first place? Before law school, I mean. What made you choose that path?" Emma was quiet for a moment, considering whether to answer. But something about the late hour, the empty room, the way Jameson had been respectful of her boundaries, made her willing to share. "My cousin," she said finally. "Maya, she was 3 years younger than me, lived with my aunt over on the east side. Her father, my uncle, he was mean when he drank, which was often." Jameson stopped stacking chairs. "Social services got called a few times, but nothing ever came of it. Maya would tell the social worker everything was fine because she was scared of what would happen if she didn't. And the social worker believed her, or pretended to, because it was easier than actually investigating. What happened? When Maya was 15, she ended up in the hospital. Broken arm, cracked ribs, still insisted she'd fallen down the stairs, still wouldn't testify against him." Emma's jaw tightened at the memory. But this time, her English teacher, Miss Patterson, she wouldn't let it go. She fought for Maya, pushed the system, made people pay attention, got Maya into foster care, got my uncle arrested, made sure Maya was safe. "Is she okay now?" "She's a nurse in Seattle. Married, 2 kids, happy." Emma met Jameson's eyes, all because one person decided she mattered enough to fight for. I wanted to be that person for other kids, wanted to make sure no child fell through the cracks, because it was inconvenient to help them. Jameson was quiet for a long moment. I'm sorry you had to watch that happen to someone you loved. Me too, but it taught me something important, that showing up matters. That one person who refuses to look away can change everything. Is that what you think you're doing here? I hope so. These kids, Emma gestured around the empty room, they need someone who sees them, who doesn't give up on them when things get hard, who treats them like they matter. They're lucky to have you. Emma smiled slightly. I'm lucky to have them. This work, it's what I was supposed to be doing all along. I just took a detour getting here. Jackson appeared at Emma's elbow, holding up his latest drawing. Look, Miss Emma, I drew you and Daddy and me at story time. Emma took the picture. 3 figures surrounded by books, all of them smiling. This is wonderful, Jackson. You're getting really good at drawing. Will you keep it, for your office? Absolutely, I'll hang it up tomorrow. Jackson beamed and ran back to collect his crayons. Jameson watched his son with an expression Emma couldn't quite read. He loves coming here, loves spending time with you. He's a great kid, he is, and he's been so much happier since Jameson stopped, seeming to reconsider his words. Since we started this program, since we met you. Emma heard what he wasn't saying, that Jackson had been struggling before, that the loss of his mother, the near accident, something had been weighing on him, and somehow, this space, these stories, this routine had helped. I'm glad, she said simply. They finished cleaning up in companionable silence. As they walked out to the parking lot, Jackson's hand in Jameson's, Emma felt something settle in her chest, a sense of rightness, of being exactly where she was supposed to be. She'd made the right choice, saying yes to this. Now she just had to make sure she didn't mess it up. The program grew faster than Emma had anticipated. By February, they'd added art classes on Wednesdays. In March, a mentorship program pairing at-risk teens with adult volunteers. In April, Saturday morning homework help sessions. Emma hired 2 part-time staff members, Marcus, a former middle school teacher who specialized in literacy, and Rebecca, a social worker who could help families navigate resources. Together, they built something that felt real and sustainable, something that was actually making a difference. But success brought complications. The first complication was attention. A local news station wanted to do a story about the Lightkeepers program. Emma refused, but Jameson pointed out that publicity could help them reach more families, attract more volunteers, potentially secure additional funding from other donors. They compromised. Emma agreed to a brief interview if they focused on the program and the kids, not on her personal story or the accident that had started everything. The segment ran for 3 minutes on the evening news, showing children reading together, Marcus leading an art class, Emma explaining their philosophy of meeting kids where they were. The phones rang for days afterward, new families wanting to enroll their kids, volunteers offering their time, and reporters, so many reporters, wanting to do follow-up stories, wanting to interview Emma, wanting to dig into her background, and write human interest pieces about the grocery clerk, who became a community leader. Emma said no to all of them. She'd agreed to help kids, not to become a public figure. But the second complication was harder to dismiss. It happened on a Sunday in late April. Emma had been invited to Jameson's house to discuss the program's expansion plans. She'd been there a few times before, always for work, always professional, always careful to maintain appropriate boundaries. The house was less intimidating than it had been that first visit. Still massive, still obviously expensive, but lived in. Jackson's toys scattered across the living room. Artwork hung at child height on the walls. The kind of comfortable wealth that came from having money long enough not to think about it constantly. They were working in Jameson's home office when the doorbell rang. Emma heard voices in the hallway. Jackson's excited greeting, a woman's voice responding, heels clicking on hardwood. Jameson's expression changed. Not quite concern, not quite wariness, but something close to both. That's Vivienne, he said quietly. Catherine's mother, Jackson's grandmother. Emma had heard about Vivienne Harrison Whitmore. Catherine's mother, a fixture in Portland society, widow of the late Senator Robert Whitmore. Jameson had mentioned her in passing, said she'd been devastated by Catherine's death, had struggled with having Jackson in her life, because he reminded her too much of what she'd lost. The office door opened without a knock,
and Vivienne swept in. She was elegant in the way only old money could manage, silver hair set perfectly, a cream suit that probably cost more than Emma made in a month, pearls at her throat. She must have been in her mid-60s, but she moved like someone who had never once been denied anything she wanted. Her gaze swept the room, landing on Emma. There was a flicker of surprise, or maybe appraisal, before her expression smoothed into polite indifference. "Jameson, darling, I didn't realize you had company." "Vivienne." Jameson stood. "This is Emma Mitchell, the director of the Lightkeepers program I mentioned." "Emma, this is Vivienne Whitmore, Catherine's mother." Emma rose and offered her hand. "Mrs. Whitmore, it's a pleasure to meet you." Vivienne's handshake was quick and cool. "Miss Mitchell." Yes, Jameson did say something about a community initiative. "Very admirable." The pause before the last word made it sound like anything but. "It's not charity," Emma replied evenly. "It's an investment in the neighborhood, and in the kids who live there." Vivienne's eyes flicked toward her, sharp but still smiling. "Of course." She turned back to Jameson. "I came to see Jackson. It's been nearly a month since I've had him to myself." "You're always welcome to visit," Jameson said. "Yes, well, the foundation has been demanding lately." Her attention shifted again, settling on Emma. "I understand Jackson's been spending quite a bit of time at your facility." "Twice a week," Emma said. "He's part of the reading circle. He's wonderful with the other children." "I see." Vivienne's smile didn't reach her eyes. "And you work closely with him, do you?" "Extra attention perhaps." "I treat him the same as the rest," Emma said, calm but firm. "Every child gets time and care when they need it. Jackson's no exception." Vivienne's gaze drifted to the papers on the desk, the project outlines, the budget notes. "How thorough," she said lightly. "Well, I won't take more of your time. Jameson, I'll collect Jackson and bring him back after lunch." Before either of them could reply, she was gone, her heels clicking briskly down the hallway, her voice immediately softening as she called for her grandson. The silence she left behind felt heavy. Jameson exhaled, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "I'm sorry you had to deal with that." Emma shook her head. "You don't need to apologize." "I do." He sat on the edge of the desk, not meeting her eyes. "Vivienne's complicated. Losing Catherine broke something in her. She adored her daughter, and seeing Jackson, it's like reopening the same wound every day. That must be hard for him." Emma said quietly. "It is. And now with you being part of his routine, she's cautious." "Cautious," Emma repeated. "You mean she thinks I'm trying to take Catherine's place?" Jameson looked almost relieved she'd said it aloud. "Yes." Emma sank back into her chair, fatigue creeping into her voice. "I'm not here to replace anyone. I'm here because Jackson needs support, and because the work matters." "I know," Jameson said, "and Jackson knows too. Vivienne she needs time. She needs to see that your role in his life doesn't erase what came before." Emma nodded slowly. "Do you want me to step back for a while, let things cool off?" "No," Jameson said, the answer immediate. "That would only make it worse. You're doing good work, Emma. Don't let her scare you off. She'll come around eventually." Emma wasn't sure she believed that. She'd seen that look in Vivienne's eyes before. Polite disdain wrapped in civility. The kind of judgment that came from people who believed kindness was only valuable if it came with a pedigree. This wasn't over, it was just the beginning. Vivienne took Jackson to lunch at Le Pigeon, an upscale restaurant downtown that Jackson tolerated because they had French fries. She ordered salmon and watched her grandson work his way through a burger, trying to see her daughter in his features. He had Catherine's eyes, her blonde hair, the shape of her face, but his mannerisms were all Jameson, the way he tilted his head when thinking, the quiet intensity with which he approached things. "Grandma, guess what?" Jackson said around a mouthful of burger. "Miss Emma said I can help her organize the books next week. She's teaching me the alphabet system so everything goes in the right place." Vivienne smiled tightly. "That's wonderful, darling. And she's really good at reading voices. Like when she reads the characters, she makes them all sound different. It's so cool." "I'm sure it is." Jackson launched into an enthusiastic description of the latest book Emma had read to the group, something about dragons and friendship and bravery. Vivienne listened with half an ear, her mind circling around the woman she'd just met. Emma Mitchell, young, attractive, clearly intelligent despite her lack of formal credentials, and from what Vivienne had observed, comfortable in Jameson's house, familiar with his routines, integrated into Jackson's life. Dangerous, in other words. Vivienne had nothing against the program itself. Community service was fine, even admirable. But the way Jackson talked about Emma, the way Jameson had looked at her, there was something there that made Vivienne's chest tighten with protective alarm. Her daughter had been gone for 2 years. 2 years of Jameson playing the grieving widower, of Jackson struggling without his mother, of Vivienne trying to hold together the pieces of a family that had shattered. And now this woman, this grocery store clerk, who'd happened to be in the right place at the right time, was inserting herself into their lives, becoming important to Jackson, spending time with Jameson. It felt wrong. It felt like betrayal, even though Vivienne knew that wasn't rational. "Jackson, darling," Vivienne said, interrupting his story about dragons. "How would you feel about spending more time with Grandma? Maybe coming to Seattle for a few weeks this summer?" Jackson's face fell slightly. "But what about the program? Miss Emma needs me to help. I'm sure Miss Mitchell will manage without you. But I don't want to miss it. It's important." Vivienne reached across the table and took Jackson's small hand. "You know your mother would want you to spend time with family. Don't you want to honor her memory?" Jackson's expression crumpled. "I do. But no buts, sweetheart. Family comes first. Always." She drove Jackson home an hour later, kissed him goodbye, and told Jameson she needed to speak with him privately. In his study with the door closed, Vivienne didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Who is she really, Jameson? I told you, she runs I know what she runs. I want to know what she means to you." To Jackson, Jameson's jaw tightened. "She's a colleague, a friend, someone doing important work. She's a woman spending an inappropriate amount of time with my widowed son-in-law and my grandson." Vivienne's voice was sharp. "Jackson can barely stop talking about her. You're having private meetings at your home on Sundays. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending this is purely professional. There's nothing inappropriate happening, Vivienne. Perhaps not yet, but I know how these things start. A shared cause, gratitude for saving Jackson's life, lonely widower and struggling woman finding comfort in each other." "Stop." Jameson's voice cut across hers. "You're making something out of nothing. Emma is dedicated to helping kids. That's all this is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're replacing Catherine with the first convenient woman who came along." The words hung in the air, ugly and accusatory. Jameson's face went pale, then flushed with anger. "That's not fair, and you know it, isn't it? My daughter has been dead for 2 years, Jameson. 2 years, and you're already moving on with some woman who saved our son's life, who gave up a stable job to build something meaningful, who treats Jackson with kindness and respect and actually makes him happy for the first time since Catherine died." Jameson's voice was low and controlled, which somehow made it more forceful. "I'm not replacing Catherine. No one could replace Catherine. But I'm also not going to spend the rest of my life frozen in grief, and I'm not going to keep Jackson from having people in his life who care about him." Vivienne felt tears prick her eyes. "He's all I have left of her, I know, and I would never keep him from you. But you can't ask me to limit who else gets to be part of his life. That's not fair to Jackson, and it's not what Catherine would have wanted." Vivienne stood up, gathering her purse with shaking hands. "Just be careful, Jameson. That's all I'm asking. Think about what's best for Jackson, not what's convenient for you." She left before he could respond, driving home to Seattle with tears streaming down her face, grieving all over again for the daughter she'd lost, and the family that would never be whole again. By late May, the Lightkeepers program had become an established presence in the neighborhood. Emma had waiting lists for most activities. Volunteers were calling to offer their time, and Jameson had suggested they do something to celebrate, a community festival to showcase the work and build awareness. Emma had resisted at first. She didn't want spectacle or attention, but the kids were excited about it, and several families had volunteered to help. So she'd agreed, with firm boundaries about keeping the focus on the community rather than on individuals. They planned it for the last Saturday in May, at a local park. Food trucks, craft stations, live music from a local youth band, games for kids, and at dusk, a candlelight ceremony where participants would release paper lanterns into the evening sky. The morning of the festival dawned clear and warm, that rare Portland day where the sun felt generous and the world seemed full of possibility. Emma arrived early to help with setup, Marcus and Rebecca already there directing volunteers. Jackson found her almost immediately, running full speed across the grass to throw himself into her arms. "Miss Emma, it's festival day, I can tell, buddy." Emma laughed, steadying him. "Did you have sugar for breakfast?" "Only a little," Jackson said, which probably meant a lot. "Daddy said I could have pancakes with syrup because it's a special day." "Your daddy is an enabler." Jameson appeared, carrying boxes of supplies. He did look tired, there were shadows under his eyes, and his hair was messier than usual, but he smiled when he saw Emma. "Morning, ready for chaos." "As ready as I'll ever be." They worked together for the next few hours, setting up tables, hanging decorations, welcoming volunteers. By noon the park was full, families streaming in, kids running between activity stations, the smell of grilled food mixing with cut grass and sunshine. Emma moved through the crowd, greeting people, troubleshooting problems, making sure everything ran smoothly. She saw the program's impact everywhere, in the teenager reading to a group of younger kids, in the mother who pulled Emma aside to thank her for the after-school care that let her work full-time, in the volunteers who'd come from across the city to support the cause. She also saw Vivienne Whitmore. The woman stood at the edge of the festival, watching everything with an expression Emma couldn't quite read. She wore a pale blue dress and a wide-brimmed hat, looking elegant and slightly out of place amid the casual chaos. Jackson spotted his grandmother and ran over. Emma watched from a distance as Vivienne embraced her grandson, watched the way the older woman's face softened when she looked at Jackson. "She's grieving," Emma reminded herself. "This isn't personal, it's just pain looking for somewhere to land." But it felt personal when Vivienne's gaze found Emma across the crowd, held for a long moment, then looked away dismissively. As afternoon wore into evening, people gathered for the main event, the candlelight ceremony. A small stage had been set up at one end of the park. Jameson was scheduled to speak, and despite Emma's protests, he'd insisted she should speak too. "You're the heart of this program," he'd said. "People should hear from you." Now, standing backstage with her heart racing and her palms sweating, Emma was regretting that agreement. She wasn't good at public speaking, didn't like being the center of attention. But Jackson was there, tugging on her hand. "You're going to do great, Miss Emma." "I know you are. Thanks, buddy." Jameson spoke first, and Emma had to admit he was good at it. He talked about community, about showing up for each other, about what it meant to hold light in dark places. "The Lightkeepers program isn't just about activities and workshops," he said. "It's about building a community where no child has to face the darkness alone, where every kid knows there's someone who sees them, who values them, who will fight for them when they need it most." The crowd applauded, and Jameson gestured toward the wings. "I'd like to invite someone special to join me. Emma Mitchell has been the driving force behind this program from day one." Emma took a deep breath and walked onto the stage. The lights were bright, the crowd large, all those faces looking at her expectantly. Her throat felt tight, but then she saw Jackson in the front row, giving her an enthusiastic thumbs up, and she felt herself relax slightly. "Hi," she said into the microphone. Her voice was steadier than she'd expected. "I'm Emma, and I'm going to keep this short, because public speaking isn't really my thing." The crowd laughed, warm and encouraging. "When Jameson first approached me about this program, I thought he was crazy. Who gives someone like me a chance to build something from scratch? Who trusts a grocery store clerk with no degree and a lot of dreams to create something meaningful?" She paused, looking out at the crowd. "But that's what this program is about, trusting people, believing in potential, showing up even when you're not sure it'll work out. And that's what you've all done. The volunteers who give their time, the parents who trust us with their kids, the kids themselves who show up week after week ready to learn and grow." Jackson ran up the stairs to the stage and grabbed her hand. "Can we do the poem, Miss Emma, like we practiced?" Emma hadn't planned on this. They'd been working on a simple rhyme for the reading group, but Jackson clearly wanted to share it with everyone. "I don't know, buddy, please. I know all the words." So they did it. Emma and Jackson stood together at the microphone reciting the simple poem they'd written about stars shining brighter when there are more of them, about finding your way home when you're lost, about holding light for each other. Jackson's voice was clear and sweet, and Emma found herself relaxing as they went, finding the rhythm, feeling the warmth of his small hand in hers.
The crowd was silent, listening, and Emma realized she wasn't nervous anymore. This felt right. This felt like exactly what she was supposed to be doing. They finished and the crowd erupted in applause. Jackson threw his arms around Emma's waist, laughing, and Emma hugged him back. Then Vivienne's voice cut across the park. "This is very touching," she said, her voice carrying despite not having a microphone. "But let's not pretend we don't all see what this really is." The applause died. Emma felt Jackson tense against her. Jameson started moving toward the stage, his expression alarmed. Vivienne stepped forward from the crowd. Her face was pale, her eyes bright with tears and fury. "My daughter is dead," she said, and her voice cracked on the words. "Catherine is dead, and here you all are watching my grandson cling to some stranger who decided to play savior." "Vivienne, don't." Jameson had reached the stage, but Vivienne wasn't finished. She looked directly at Emma. "You're not his mother, you'll never be his mother, and I won't stand here and watch you pretend otherwise." The silence that followed was terrible. Emma felt Jackson shaking, heard his small intake of breath. She felt the weight of hundreds of eyes on her, felt heat crawling up her neck. But she also felt anger, bone deep and righteous, at this woman who would make a child feel like caring about someone other than his dead mother was somehow betrayal. Emma stepped forward to the microphone, keeping one hand on Jackson's shoulder. "You're right," she said quietly. Vivienne blinked, clearly not expecting agreement. "I'm not Jackson's mother," Emma continued. "I'm not trying to be. I can't be. Catherine was his mother, and nothing will change that. Nothing should change that." She met Vivienne's eyes. "But here's what I can be. I can be someone who shows up. Someone who reads stories and helps with homework and makes sure he knows he's valued. I can be someone who helps create a space where kids feel safe, not to replace anyone. Not for recognition or gratitude, just because these children deserve to have people who care." Emma's voice grew firmer. "You want to know what this program really is? It's not about me, it's not about Jameson, it's about kids who need someone to believe in them. Kids who need to know they matter. Kids like your grandson who lost his mother but still has so much love to give. And yes, I used to work at a grocery store, and yes, I'm black, and yes, maybe that makes some people uncomfortable. But none of that changes what we're doing here." She turned to Vivienne and her voice softened. "I know you're hurting, Mrs. Whitmore. I know you miss your daughter, but Jackson is still here. He's still alive, still growing, still needing people to show up for him. And I promise you, I swear that I will never try to take Catherine's place, but I won't apologize for being someone he can count on." Jackson pulled away from Emma and walked to the edge of the stage. His voice was small but clear. "Grandma. Miss Emma makes me happy. Like Mommy used to. I think Mommy would want that, don't you?" It was the simplicity of it that broke through, a child's honest observation, unvarnished by adult complexity. Vivienne stared at her grandson, at his tear-stained face and earnest eyes. Her face crumpled. "Oh, Jackson," she whispered. She climbed the stairs to the stage and pulled Jackson into her arms, holding him tight. Over his head she looked at Emma. The hostility was gone, replaced by something rawer, grief and recognition and grudging acceptance. "I'm sorry," Vivienne said. The words seemed to cost her everything. "You're right, I can't let her go. I can't stop trying to hold on to her." "You don't have to let her go," Emma said gently. "She's part of Jackson. She always will be. But Jackson needs to keep living. He needs people who will help him do that." Vivienne nodded, still crying. Jameson climbed onto the stage and put his arm around his mother-in-law's shoulders. For a moment they all stood there together. Jameson, Vivienne, Jackson and Emma, a constellation of grief and hope and tentative healing. Then Jackson said, "Can we do the lanterns now? I want to send one up for Mommy." The moment broke gently. The crowd stirred, conversations resuming in hushed tones. Volunteers began distributing the paper lanterns, simple rice papers stretched over wire frames with small tea lights nestled safely in the center. Emma helped Jackson with his lantern, showing him how to light the candle carefully, how to hold the frame steady as warm air began to fill it. Her hands were shaking slightly, adrenaline still coursing through her from the confrontation. Vivienne stood beside them, watching. She'd composed herself somewhat, though her eyes were still red, her expression still raw. "May I help?" Vivienne asked Jackson quietly. Jackson nodded, moving aside to make room. Together grandmother and grandson held the lantern, their hands steadying each other. Emma stepped back, giving them space. Jameson appeared at her elbow. "Thank you," he said softly, "for what you said. I just told the truth. I know that's why it mattered. They waited until full dark had fallen, until the park was filled with candlelight reflected in hundreds of faces. Then together they released their lanterns. Emma watched hers rise, glowing golden against the darkness, joining dozens of others as they drifted upward. It looked like a river of light flowing into the sky, each lantern a small hope sent spinning into the universe. Jackson stood between his grandmother and Emma, one hand in each. "Look," he breathed. "They're so beautiful. Mommy can see them, right, Grandma?" Vivienne's voice was thick. "Yes, sweetheart, I think she can see everything." They stood like that, Vivienne, Jackson, Emma, and Jameson, watching the lanterns rise until they became indistinguishable from the stars. Emma thought about beginnings and endings, about how sometimes they were the same thing, about how light didn't fade when shared, it only spread further. After the festival ended, after the last families drifted away and the volunteers had packed up the tables, Emma and Jameson stayed behind to fold the last few chairs. Jackson was already asleep in the car, worn out from the day's excitement. "Long day," Jameson said, his voice carrying the kind of tired relief that follows something worthwhile. Emma smiled faintly. "A good one though." He nodded. "I'm sorry about Vivienne, what she said earlier." "She was grieving," Emma replied. "And she wasn't completely wrong. I'm not Catherine. I can't be what she was to Jackson." Jameson looked down, then back at her. "No one could be, but you've helped him find steady ground again. That's something Catherine would have wanted." Emma hesitated. "And you, have you found any kind of steady ground yet?" He seemed surprised by the question. "I don't know. I've mostly just been trying to keep things moving for Jackson, for the foundation, for the people depending on us." "You've done more than that," Emma said. "The program exists because you believed it could." He shook his head. "Because we did. You kept it going when I wasn't sure I could." They stood quietly for a moment, the sound of light rain returning, tapping against the asphalt like a reminder that the night wasn't finished yet. "She must have meant a great deal to you," Emma said softly. "She did," Jameson answered. "And I think she'd be proud of this, of what we're doing, of how people like you keep the light going." Emma's throat tightened, but she only nodded. "Then let's keep it going for her, and for everyone who needs it." "Deal," Jameson said, offering a tired smile. They walked toward their cars together, the last of the lanterns still glowing faintly above the city, like small promises against the dark. Emma knew that what they had built, this sense of teamwork, of shared responsibility, was fragile in its own way. It needed time and care, the same patience they asked of the children in their program. Whatever came next, it had to grow honestly, with respect for what had come before. "I should get going," she said. "My mother will be waiting." Jameson nodded. "All right, get some rest, you've earned it." Emma gave a small wave and walked to her car. When she started the engine, she glanced in the rearview mirror, not to find anyone watching her, but to take one last look at the festival grounds. The lights were fading, but the memory of the night still lingered like warmth after a storm. She drove home through quiet streets, her thoughts circling the day, Vivienne's sharp words, Jackson's laughter, the moment she had stood on that stage and said what needed to be said. For the first time in a long while, Emma didn't feel like an imposter. She'd been afraid at the beginning, afraid of failing, afraid of not being enough, afraid that her past as a grocery clerk and law school dropout would always define her. But tonight had proved something different, that the work mattered more than the resume, that sometimes showing up, imperfect but determined, was enough to change something for others, and for herself. But tonight she'd stood in front of a crowd, and owned who she was, and the world hadn't ended. If anything, it had opened up. When she got home, her mother was awake, sitting in her recliner with the TV on low. "How was it, baby girl?" Emma sat on the floor beside the chair, resting her head against her mother's knee like she used to do as a child. "It was intense. But good, really good. Tell me." So Emma did. She told her about the festival, about Vivienne's confrontation, about Jackson's defense of her, about the lanterns rising into the sky like prayers made visible. Evelyn listened, one hand stroking Emma's hair. "I'm proud of you," she said when Emma finished. "So proud. I was scared, Mama." "I know, but you did it anyway. That's what courage is." Emma closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of her mother's hand, the comfort of being known and loved. "Thank you." "For what?" "For teaching me that showing up matters, that doing right by people matters." "All of this," Emma gestured vaguely, "it started with you, with how you raised me." Evelyn's voice was soft. "Then I did something right with my life."
They sat together for a while, mother and daughter, letting the silence speak what words couldn't fully express. Summer brought changes. The program expanded to include a full-day summer camp, giving working parents a safe place for their kids while school was out. Emma hired 2 more staff members and trained a corps of teenage volunteers who were program alumni now old enough to give back. Jackson thrived. He'd grown 2 inches and lost a tooth, leaving a gap in his grin that made everyone at the center smile. He helped Emma organize supplies, read to the younger kids, and had become a quiet leader in ways that would have been unimaginable 6 months earlier. Vivienne, true to her word, had been trying. She volunteered at the center once a week, reading to the children, managing paperwork and bringing a sense of order to the chaos. Her relationship with Emma was careful, cordial, built on mutual respect if not affection. But she was there, and that mattered. Jameson stopped by often, sometimes with Jackson, sometimes alone. He and Emma fell into an easy rhythm, reviewing grant proposals, sorting through reports, and talking about what might come next for the program. They shared long evenings of planning and problem solving, cups of coffee gone cold beside stacks of paperwork. Their conversations ranged from budgets to books, from logistics to the quiet satisfaction of seeing children find their footing again. It wasn't always easy, but it was steady, reliable, the kind of partnership that came from working towards something larger than either of them. But neither of them pushed it. The work was too important, the stakes too high. Besides, Emma had her hands full. Her mother's condition had stabilized with better medical care and the reduction of financial stress, but Evelyn was still frail, still needed constant attention. Emma juggled work and caregiving with practiced efficiency, but the exhaustion accumulated in ways that showed dark circles under her eyes, weight loss, a bone-deep tiredness that no amount of sleep could cure. One afternoon in late July, Emma was in her office reviewing applications for the fall program when Jameson knocked on her door. "Got a minute?" "Sure. What's up?" Jameson closed the door and sat down across from her. "I'm worried about you." Emma frowned. "Why?" "Because you're running yourself into the ground. You're here 60 hours a week, then going home to take care of your mother. When do you sleep? When do you take care of yourself?" "I'm fine." "You're not. Emma, you're exhausted. I can see it." Emma felt defensive irritation rise. "What do you want me to do, Jameson? Cut back on work? Neglect my mother? I'm doing the best I can." "I know, and it's not sustainable." Jameson leaned forward. "Let me help. Let me hire a home health aide for your mother. Someone who can be there during the day, give you some breathing room." "I can't afford." "I can. Consider it part of your benefits package. You can't do this job well if you're completely burnt out." Emma wanted to refuse, wanted to maintain her independence, her pride, her sense that she could handle everything herself. But she was so tired, and her mother needed more care than Emma could provide, while working full-time. "Okay," she said finally. "But I'm paying you back eventually." Jameson smiled. "Sure, eventually." The home health aide, a warm, capable woman named Patricia, started the following week. She came Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, helping Evelyn with meals, medication and company. The difference was immediate. For the first time in months, Emma could breathe. She found herself enjoying her work again, really engaging with it, not just surviving from one day to the next. She also began spending more time with Jameson. They developed a habit of having dinner together once a week, not fancy meals, just takeout in the office while reviewing reports and discussing new ideas. The conversations always began with work but often drifted toward broader things, community issues, family stories, what they wanted the program to become. It wasn't personal in a sentimental way, it was the kind of honest exchange that happens between people who trust each other's judgment. One evening in August, over Thai food and spreadsheets, Jameson asked, "Have you ever thought about finishing your law degree?" Emma looked up, caught off guard. "What? You only had a year left when you stopped. You could finish it part-time. With what you've built here, it'd be more relevant than ever." "I can't afford law school," Emma said. "The program could cover it," he replied. "Call it professional development." She frowned. "That's not how professional development works." "It is if we make it that way," Jameson said simply. "You've earned the chance to use your voice on a bigger scale. Think about it. It's not charity, it's investment. In you and in the work we're doing." Something in his tone made her pause. Not sentiment, conviction. Emma felt a quiet shift inside her. Hope, cautious but real. "I'll think about it," she said. "Good," Jameson replied. Just don't say no because you think you don't deserve it. The comment landed harder than Jameson probably intended. Emma set down her fork. What's that supposed to mean? It means I've watched you for months now refuse help, refuse opportunities, refuse anything that might make your life easier. And I think it's because somewhere deep down, you don't believe you deserve good things. Emma felt exposed, seen in ways she didn't like. You don't know me as well as you think you do. Maybe not, but I know you saved my son's life and then refused payment. I know you took a job that paid half what you're worth because you didn't want to seem like you were taking advantage. I know you're working yourself to exhaustion because you feel like you have to earn your place here every single day. I do have to earn it. This isn't I'm not. Emma struggled for words. I'm not like you, Jameson. I didn't grow up with money, or privilege, or the assumption that the world would be kind to me. I had to fight for everything I got, and when I stopped fighting, when I let my guard down and assumed I deserved good things, life reminded me real quick that it doesn't work that way for people like me. People like you, Jameson repeated. You mean black women, or you mean poor people? Or you mean people who've had to sacrifice their dreams? All of it, any of it. Emma stood up, suddenly needing distance. You don't understand what it's like to always be the diversity hire, the charity case, the person people help because it makes them feel good about themselves. I've spent my whole life trying to prove I deserve to take up space, and I'm tired of it. But I'm also not going to stop, because the second I do, people like Vivienne will be proven right, that I was just an opportunist who saw a rich man and a chance to upgrade my life. That's not what Vivienne thinks anymore. Isn't it? You think she's really accepted me, or is she just tolerating me because Jackson likes me and it's easier than fighting? Jameson stood too. I think she's trying. I think you're both trying. And I think you're so busy protecting yourself from perceived judgment that you're not letting yourself see when people actually care about you. Emma felt tears prick her eyes, which made her angrier. Don't do that. Do what? Make this about my issues. Make it about me not accepting care, instead of about the reality of what it means to be the poor black woman in a rich white man's orbit. Is that what you think this is? Me making you into my project, isn't it? You saw someone who saved your kid, someone struggling, someone you could help. And helping me makes you feel good, makes you feel like you're honoring Catherine's memory. But what happens when helping me stops being convenient? What happens when the novelty wears off and you realize I'm just a regular person with regular problems that can't be solved with money? Jameson's jaw tightened. You really think that little of me? I think you're a good person who means well. But I also think you don't understand how different our worlds are. How much power you have in this dynamic. How easy it would be for you to destroy everything I've built here if you decided you were done. I would never, you wouldn't mean to, but Jameson, you fund this program. You own this relationship. If you decided tomorrow that you were done, that you wanted to move on or shut this down or whatever, I'd have no recourse. I'd be back to square one. And that scares me. There was a long silence. Jameson looked at her with an expression Emma couldn't read, hurt, maybe, or anger, or disappointment. I'm sorry you feel that way, he said finally. I'm sorry I've made you feel like your position here is precarious. That wasn't my intention. I know. But Emma, you need to understand something. This program exists because of you, your vision, your work, your relationship with these kids. I provide funding, but you provide everything that actually matters. And if you think I don't see that, if you think I don't value that, then I've failed to communicate something fundamental. Emma felt the anger drain out of her, leaving exhaustion in its wake. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. That was unfair. No, it wasn't. You're right that there's a power imbalance here. You're right that I have privilege you don't, and you're right that I needed to hear you say it. Jameson moved closer but didn't touch her. But Emma, I'm not going anywhere. This program isn't going anywhere. Your job is secure for as long as you want it, and I'm going to keep pushing you to accept opportunities, like finishing law school, because you deserve them, not because I'm trying to control you, or make you dependent on me. Emma nodded, not trusting her voice. Okay, okay. They cleaned up the dinner remains in silence, the easy comfort of earlier in the evening replaced by something more fraught. When Jameson left, he paused at the door. For what it's worth, I don't see you as a charity case or a project. I see you as the person who saved my son's life and then built something incredible with the chance I gave you. I see you as a friend, and I hope eventually you'll believe that's real. Then he was gone, and Emma was alone in the office, staring at the wall and wondering why she couldn't just accept good things when they came. Emma enrolled in law school that fall, taking night classes twice a week while working full-time. It was exhausting, but it was also invigorating, using her mind in ways she'd missed, remembering why she'd fallen in love with the law in the first place. The program continued to grow. By October they were serving over 100 kids weekly, had a waiting list for most activities, and were being courted by other neighborhoods to expand. Emma was careful about expansion. She wanted growth that meant something, measured, deliberate, sustainable, quality over quantity. The goal was never to get bigger, but to stay connected to the people they served. Jameson supported her caution completely. After the disagreement in August, they had settled back into their steady rhythm. There was a new understanding between them, an awareness of boundaries, of roles, of the care it took to balance shared leadership. They worked well together because they respected each other's strengths. There were still moments that spoke to that understanding. A late night in November when they were both finishing reports, and Jameson wordlessly set a cup of coffee on Emma's desk, made just the way she liked it. An afternoon in December when Emma was reading to the kids and glanced up to see him standing in the doorway, listening quietly, the hint of pride in his expression matching her own sense of purpose. A snowy evening in January when they walked to their cars together, talking about the year's goals and what they hoped the next season might bring. The cold hung between their breaths, but the conversation carried the quiet ease of people who had come to rely on each other's steadiness. There was no promise in it, only mutual respect and the unspoken understanding that some partnerships didn't need to be anything more to matter deeply. Jackson turned 8 in February. He insisted on having his birthday party at the community center, inviting every child from the program, and covering the walls with hand-painted signs that read "Light Keepers Forever." Emma baked cupcakes, helped set up games, and watched Jackson blow out his candles with a wish he kept secret, smiling like someone who finally felt at home. When the party was winding down and parents were gathering coats, Jackson came to her with a card he'd made himself.
Inside, in his careful, uneven handwriting, were the words, "Thank you for saving my life and for being my friend. You are the best light keeper. Love, Jackson." Emma felt her throat tighten and her eyes sting. "Thank you, buddy. This is the best present anyone's ever given me." He grinned. "Better than the drawing. Better than the drawing," she said, laughing through the tears. Jackson threw his arms around her. "I love you, Miss Emma." Emma hugged him back, holding on for a moment longer than she meant to. "Love you too, kiddo," she said softly. "Now go grab another cupcake before they're all gone." And when he ran off toward the table laughing, Emma thought about how far they had all come, the boy who had learned to trust again, and the woman who had learned that sometimes the brightest light you can give is simply showing up. Across the room, Jameson was talking to Vivienne, but he was watching Emma and Jackson with an expression that made Emma's chest tight. Later, after everyone had gone home, Jameson stayed behind to help Emma clean up. They worked in companionable silence, bagging trash, stacking chairs, wiping frosting off tables that had seen too much laughter for one day. "He meant it, you know," Jameson said finally. "When he said he loves you." Emma nodded. "I know. Does that scare you?" She thought for a moment. "A little," she admitted. "But it's a good kind of scary. Loving people means risking loss, but some people are worth that. Like Jackson." "Like Jackson." Emma smiled faintly, glancing at him. "And like you. You've both become family whether you plan to or not." Jameson looked at her for a long moment, something quiet and sincere in his expression. "That means a lot, Emma. More than I can probably say. It's just the truth," she said. "You've done a lot for me, for this program, for all of us. I don't take that lightly." He nodded. "Well, it goes both ways. You reminded me what purpose feels like. You built something real here." They finished cleaning up after that, their words giving way to an easy quiet. It wasn't the kind of silence that pressed, it was the kind that felt earned. When they stepped outside, the air was cold enough to sting, their breath visible in faint clouds. The parking lot lights threw long shadows across the snow. "See you tomorrow?" Jameson asked. "Wouldn't miss it," Emma replied. He smiled. "Drive safe, you too." Emma drove home feeling the kind of tired that came from a good day, a full day. The kind that left her heart heavy but content. Her mother was still awake when she walked in, sitting in her recliner as Patricia gathered her things to leave. "Good night, Emma," Patricia said. "Your mother had a good day. We went for a short walk this afternoon." "That's wonderful," Emma said. "Thank you, Patricia." After she left, Evelyn looked at Emma with a small knowing smile. You look peaceful, peaceful. Emma repeated, amused, peaceful. Evelyn said again, like someone who's finally where she's supposed to be. Emma sank down on the floor beside her mother's chair, resting her head lightly against Evelyn's knee. It was a good day, Mama. A really good one. Evelyn stroked her daughter's hair. You've worked hard for that, baby. You deserve it. Emma closed her eyes, letting the warmth of her mother's voice settle around her like a blanket. For the first time in a long while she felt not just hopeful but at peace with where she was and the people who had helped her get there. The next 6 months passed in a blur of work, study, and steady progress. Emma poured herself into the community center program and her final semester of law school, balancing both with the quiet determination of someone who'd learned the value of second chances. Jameson helped where he could, coordinating funding, repairing shelves, driving the donated van when the weather turned bad. They worked side by side most days, not out of obligation but out of shared purpose. Around Jackson, everything stayed gentle and steady. They didn't talk about change or promises, only about projects, books, and the children they helped together. One afternoon, while they were sorting through a pile of donated books, Jackson glanced up at her. Miss Emma, he asked curiously, are you and my dad best friends? Emma smiled, pausing her work. Yeah, she said after a beat. I think we are. We help each other make things better for other people. That's a good kind of friendship. Jackson nodded thoughtfully. I think it's good. You make Daddy smile more, and you're already like family anyway. Yeah, Emma asked softly. Yeah, but Miss Emma, what buddy? You're not replacing Mom, right? Grandma said you're not, but I just wanted to ask. Emma set the book aside and knelt until they were eye level. She took his small hands gently. I could never replace your mom, Jackson, she said. She'll always be part of who you are. I'm just someone who cares about you and your dad and wants to help where I can. That's all. Jackson's shoulders relaxed, his expression easing. Okay, he said after a moment. I think Mom would like that. Emma's throat tightened. I hope so, buddy. With the serious focus only an 8-year-old could summon, Jackson handed her another book. Now come on, he said. We've got a lot of sorting left to do. Emma laughed softly and took it from him, grateful again for the quiet strength of a child who seemed to understand more about grace than most adults ever would. In May, Emma walked across the stage at Lewis and Clark and accepted her law degree. Her mother was there, frail but smiling from her wheelchair. In the audience, Jameson and Jackson cheered the loudest when her name was called. After the ceremony, Jackson came running toward her, clutching a folded piece of paper that looked like it had been written and rewritten a dozen times. I made you something, he said, a little breathless. Emma unfolded the card carefully. Inside, in his careful handwriting, it read, Congratulations on finishing school. You are the smartest and best person I know. Love, Jackson. P.S. Can I call you Mom now? For a moment Emma couldn't see the words through her tears. She knelt down, still holding the card, and wrapped her arms around him. If you want to call me Mom, she whispered, her voice shaking, you can call me Mom. Jackson pulled back, eyes wide. Really, really. He looked toward his grandmother who stood nearby, tears glinting in her eyes but a small proud smile on her face. I don't think Grandma will be mad, Emma said gently. Jackson threw his arms around her again, squeezing tight. Best graduation present ever, he said, into her shoulder. Emma laughed through her tears, holding him close. In that moment, surrounded by the child she'd once saved, the family they'd all built, and the quiet proof that love could take many shapes, she understood that motherhood wasn't about replacing someone. It was about continuing what love had started. 3 years later, the Lightkeepers program had expanded to 8 locations across Portland. Emma now served as executive director, leading a staff of 25 and supporting more than 500 children each week. She'd passed the bar exam on her first try and divided her time between running the organization and doing pro bono legal work for families who had nowhere else to turn. The dream she once thought she'd lost had come back to her, reshaped, stronger, rooted in purpose rather than ambition. Jameson had remained her closest collaborator and most trusted friend. Together they had built something that outlived the storms that had once defined their lives. On the anniversary of the program's founding, they stood in the rain outside the original community center, laughing as the children released lanterns into the sky. Can you believe it's been 3 years? Jameson asked. Emma smiled. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime. Sometimes like yesterday.
Jackson had grown tall and confident, volunteering as a junior mentor at the very place that had once helped him find his footing. Vivienne had become one of the program's strongest advocates, attending every event, reading to the kids, and quietly funding scholarships in Catherine's name. Evelyn still came by when she could, her health fragile but her pride in her daughter unshakable. The Lightkeepers continued to grow, but Emma never let it lose its heart. Each new center carried the same mission that had started it all: to bring light into dark places, to show up for kids who needed someone to believe in them, to remind every child that they were not alone. And on nights when the city was quiet and the rain fell just right, Emma would walk past that same intersection where everything began. She would stop, breathe in the damp air and whisper a small promise to herself and to the world she'd helped rebuild. Keep the lights on, keep showing up, keep believing. One evening in November, Emma stood at the community center watching the new crop of kids at reading hour. Marcus was leading tonight, his voice animated as he read, the children sitting in rapt attention. Jameson appeared at her elbow, slipping his arm around her waist, ready to go home. Almost. I want to watch a little longer. They stood together watching Marcus read, watching the children's faces glow with laughter and wonder. Jackson, now 11, tall and sure of himself, was helping a younger child sound out a tricky word, his voice patient and encouraging. You did this, Jameson said quietly. All of it. It's because of you. Emma shook her head. It's because of all of us. You, me, Marcus, Rebecca, the volunteers, the families. It takes a community to keep the lights on. Jameson smiled faintly. Maybe, but you were the first to strike the match. You're the Lightkeeper, the one who showed us how. Emma looked out over the room, the shelves lined with books, the walls covered in children's drawings, the hum of belonging that filled every corner. She thought back to that rainy afternoon 4 years ago, when she'd seen a child in danger and acted without thinking. She hadn't known in that moment how much her life was about to change, or how much hope she would one day see reflected in so many faces. Maybe that was what it meant to be a Lightkeeper, not to hold all the light alone but to pass it on until it lived in others. And as she watched Jackson laugh with the younger kids, Emma knew the light would keep spreading, far beyond her, far beyond this room, carried by every hand brave enough to keep it burning. We're all Lightkeepers, she said softly. Every person who chooses to show up, to care, to hold the light when things get dark. That's all any of us can do. Jameson nodded beside her, his voice steady. Then I'm grateful we get to do it together. They stood for a while longer, watching the children play, watching the community that had grown from one small act of courage. Then they called for Jackson, gathered their things and headed home, to the house that had become a second home for so many, to the life they'd built out of service and shared purpose, to the future they kept shaping one day at a time. Outside, the rain fell soft and steady, the same way it had that day everything began. But inside, there was light. There was always light.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.